Hello everyone, and welcome to training tape number 3 for basketball officials for the 2023-2024 season. Quick turnaround from training tape number 2. We have a lot of clips to look at today, and hopefully some things that can help you touch up your game as we head towards the second half of conference play for most schools across the state. Before we get into this video, just a few disclaimers for us. Training tape is a product of the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance. The training does not reflect any instructions specifically given by the WIAA or the NFHS. Our training is for 3-person officiating crews at the high school level. Clips may be used from college basketball games, and no video or comment is meant to call out or degrade any players, coaches, officials, or teams in any way. We're doing these for learning purposes only. And my name is Cade Murray. I'm the training coordinator for the Wisconsin Officials Association Alliance. And if you'd like to reach out to me at any time, my email is listed there on the screen. So our first topic that we're going to talk about today is trusting the system. And it's one that I think is preached a lot at all levels and in any sports, but especially in some clips that have sort of surfaced from our area and kind of everywhere, wherever there's basketball, we see officials not trusting the system. And this can put us in a really, really bad spot. So it's important, I think, that we highlight this. And when we talk about trusting the system, we're doing it because we want to maintain credibility. These coaches know somewhat of how this works. Some know it better than others. But they're going to know if you're not in a position to make a call and you call something and they question that stuff. And that loses our credibility as officials. And I think it's really important that, we understand that our primary coverage areas are there for a reason. That is what we are primarily officiating. Very rarely should we have to go out of our primary coverage areas. The NFHS released a really, really good officials manual, the 2023 through 2025 officials manual. If you have not looked through that book, just look through it. It's really, really good. It's more modeled how the college books are now, and it's very, very good with telling you this is what you do in these certain situations. And if us as an officiating group can stick to that manual, we're going to find more consistency across the state, across the Midwest, across the nation. And I think a big one that a subtopic of this is understanding how drives from the basket or drives to the basket work. When we have drives from the trail and center's primary, they're responsible for that ball handler and primary defender. Our lead needs to own those secondary defenders. And I think that's something that we're seeing the lead kind of, their eyes are really darting towards the ball. And we're not picking up our secondary defenders, and that's leading us to call block charges incorrectly. And, of course, the trail and center can always help when necessary, but if we can stick to that principle of trail and center on the primaries and lead on the secondaries, we're going to find a lot more consistency in our block charge calls. Another subtopic is rebounding coverage. This is the whole crew. We've heard a lot of crews. A crew will come in pregame and say, if we have rebounding fouls, we want them to come from the trail or center. And the question to that is why? If a lead sees a clear push in the back, why is the lead not calling that? Oftentimes, if the trail and center are in their proper positions, they may have to step down. And rebounding is the hardest thing for us to cover as a crew because that is the most unpredictable way in which players are going to match up, how they are going to go in and try and establish position. It puts us in the toughest spot as a crew. And the lead should absolutely be able to help on anything. It is a crew call. It is not designated to 1 or 2 officials on the crew. It is all 3 officials at all times are helping with that rebounding. And lastly, knowing when to trust your partners and knowing when to help your partners. I think there's a big line, that needs to be set as a crew. You need to understand when to come in and help your partners out and when you just need to let them, kind of live or die. And we'll look at some examples of these as we get rolling through the clips. So let's take a look at this first clip here. And while nothing happens drastically, it's a really good reminder. We have a transition play, and we see that the lead has their eyes on this the whole way through, and they end up kind of marking the 3, it looks like. And that that ends up just not, that's not trusting the system. We see the trail is down the floor. They have eyes on the play, and now we have two sets of eyes on one shooting matchup, and we have one set of eyes on 8 players potentially rebounding the ball. Now, there are no offensive players that crash in here to rebound, and that kind of saves us in this situation from something potentially happening. But imagine if all 4 of those perimeter players crashed into the rim trying to get the offensive rebound. We would put the center on an island. And so as the lead, you need to be disciplined to keep your eyes, being as wide as they are is certainly good, but keeping your eyes towards those players that are rebounding the basketball. Again, nothing bad happens in this play, and seemingly, if you were just watching it through, you probably wouldn't think anything of it. But when we really think about the what ifs, you can think all to yourself, okay, that's not going to happen, but then it does happen, and it puts us in a tough spot. So trusting that system, in high school, the lead should never be looking towards the corner, so we don't ever want to have our eyes there. We certainly don't want to be marking threes or anything like that. Leave that to the trail. Again, the trail gets down and is able to get in position to be able to mark that three. Close down a little bit and officiate the rebounding coverage as the lead here. Here's a play where we have a situation where we have a loose ball kind of on the floor, and we'll talk about loose balls, and we see the trail come in and get a foul. This is a situation where we want to help our partners. We see the lead rotating over, completing a rotation, not able to really help out from their angle. And we see the trail, has a bird's eye look at the play. And the center here, the reason we want to help is because the center is right on top of this play. They're, seeing if the ball is going to go out of bounds. They're seeing if potentially there's going to be a travel or something like that. And the trail does a great job of having eyes on it, recognizing there's nothing in their primary, coming in and helping on this call. This is what we want. This is a crew call here. This is an example where we want the trail to come across and we want them to be able to help. If we do that, we're going to help each other out even more in covering these plays effectively. And again, we'll talk more about loose balls later in the video. The center can have a really tough time getting this with them being right there, right on top of it, not seeing that player coming in. The trail can pick that up from a further distance away and be ready to come in and help. So here's an example of our drive to the basket here. We see this play get picked up in the center's primary. Center follows it all the way in, and we have a block charge scenario happen underneath the rim. If we watch the lead here, we see that they kind of gravitate their eyes towards the ball and don't pick up the secondary defender and then follow the ball out of bounds instead of staying with that. In these types of situations where you have a secondary defender setting up and we have a loose ball, we want to officiate that contact the best we can, and we'll worry about the out of bounds call at a later point. But you see here that we have 2 kids going down on the floor. We need to get a foul here, and this secondary defender that comes in is the leads. Now, the center necessarily doesn't have a primary defender here because there's kind of a botched coverage by White, but they still, they are not the ones who are responsible for making this call right out the bat. Now, changing topics a little bit, this is an example where we want to come in and we want to have a foul. We have 2 bodies on the floor. The center is really, really patient, sees that the lead is not going to have anything, and then comes in and makes a call based the best off of their judgment. In this case, I believe that the center gets it right, but not always in these situations is the center going to be able to make the correct call, and sort of has to guess, but also needs to have a whistle on it. So as the lead, be really, really patient and see these defenders coming the whole way through, especially in these games where you have a lot of drives to the basket. You have to be able to see these and be able to make a call. And if we don't, then we can really get ourselves in trouble. So here's another play here where we have a drive to the basket, and we kind of have that intersecting line of center and trail drive to the basket here. And this is important where we communicate with ourselves in our body language of where we are officiating. As we see here, this does sort of originate in the trail's primary. So the trail coming in here with the foul is not necessarily the worst thing. At the same time, we can also argue that the center has a really good look at this play and is able to officiate this play effectively. So think about, when you have these types of plays, communicate that stuff. If you see that as a trail that the center picks this up, we can kind of back off a little bit and allow the center to come in and make a judgment. Center certainly could be another step or two onto the floor to be able to officiate this play effectively, but I'm not necessarily faulting the trail for coming in and getting a foul here. Other things that we want to consider too, if we don't have the best look at this as trail, we may want to kind of hold off on the whistle. Now I know in the last play we talked about players being on the floor and us needing to have a whistle. And that's on a block charge play. In this case where we have a drive to the basket and we have a shooter trying to go up and down and seemingly initiates all the contact into the offensive player, into the defensive players, we don't necessarily want to penalize those defensive players for this contact being created. So in this case, speaking on the contact itself and the judgment specifically, I think this would be an excellent no call if we had it here. We see these players go in, especially these athletic bigs, try and drive in and then sort of generate all this contact and then go to the floor, and we often get fooled by it. So being patient, again, I don't have an issue with the trail coming in and getting this foul, but if the C has a really good look and we see that the C is taking this the whole way in, we want to trust the C here to come in and get this foul. So this is a rebounding coverage play, and this is a really tough one for us to officiate and get effectively. We see that matchup kind of heading towards the corner, and it's a really tough play. We see elbows kind of getting thrown all over the place, and how are we going to cover this effectively? Well, to start, we want to make sure, just speaking from all three positions, trail, don't want to bail here. Trail, you see when this is being called is at half court, and as trail, until that ball is secured, we want to step down and make sure we're officiating the rebounding coverage. As lead, generally as lead, we want to support, backing out and seeing this as a whole. But the way this ball bounces and the way this matchup kind of happens and this play happens, I would actually support the lead starting to push more towards the paint and maybe even backing up a little bit if they can, just to try and see the angle between these two players. This is a really, really tough play to have. As the center, want to step down a little bit and try and officiate this to the best of our ability. I do believe if the center is maybe a step more onto the court and steps down a little bit, they might be able to see the space between these two players and come out and make a ruling on this play. But overall, also, if the trail's where they are supposed to be, they could have a really good opinion on this play, looking at this play right down the center and seeing this. So regardless of what the call is, it's really important that we adjust ourselves, to see where the matchups are and be able to rule on these plays effectively. Like I said, rebounding is where we are the most vulnerable, and this is certainly a spot in where we get ourselves to be the most vulnerable, where we have a situation where we can't necessarily officiate this play effectively. But still, if we can get ourselves in the best positions that we can be, we can maybe do a job of getting this play, and it does look like the center gets a foul on this play, which is good. On this play, this is a good example of picking up the secondary defender as the lead. We see that a drive comes from the trail's primary. Trail takes the ball handler and takes that primary defender, and then the lead officiates the secondary defender the whole way through. And that helps us be able to come in and get a ruling on this. Now, whether it's a block or a charge, you can kind of leave up to debate for yourself. But regardless, this is a really good example of, as the lead, we want to come in and we want to have opinions on this play. And that's what the lead does here. And I applaud the lead for coming in and being able to have a ruling on this play. So here's another drive to the basket play. And this time we're going to see it come from the center's primary, and we're going to have a foul by the primary defender. This is one where the center wants to own this. We see that the lead kind of has to step in a little bit. But as lead, you want to stay disciplined to your secondary defenders. So specifically, red 5 or red 1 coming in here trying to step up and take a charge here. Let the center come through and own this if they can. Now in this case where we have a blatant elbow and a shove out of bounds and the center's not going to have a ruling, I don't necessarily have a problem with the lead getting this foul because it is a foul. But again, we want to trust that system. Center, you need to be able to own these plays so that we can have a good working system and we can be watching those secondary defenders consistently as lead, and then the primary defenders being officiated by the trail and the center respectively. This is more getting back to trusting the system a little bit more. We see a transition play and we see that the center comes in and calls a travel from across the court. This is a case where we want to let the trail live or die with this. What the issue that we have here is that the play doesn't open up to the center. It goes away from them. The back of the ball handler is being shown to the center here, and we can't see if that ball is being potentially fumbled, and thus can't necessarily make an accurate ruling on a travel here. Now the camera angle doesn't let us know for sure of what the call is going to be, what the correct call would be. But necessarily here we want to let the trail live and die with these, trust the system, because if we end up being wrong in a close, tight game down the stretch, that could be pivotal to the game itself. So we want to make sure that we are trusting our partners, trusting the system in these scenarios. Here again is another, sort of trusting the system play. We see a shot or a turnover here, and as the player is dribbling away, we see the old lead, new trail call a double dribble here. Again, with the player's back facing them. Can't see for sure where the ball is. And the center here has a really good look at this play and is able to officiate these effectively. So if we trust our center here, that leads us, again, to a lot more credibility. So let them live or die with this play. Don't come in, and if you don't have for sure definite knowledge here, don't come in and officiate this. If you're going to, call these types of plays like that travel we just showed or this double dribble, think to yourselves, why is my partner passing on this play? Is there something missing? And if you think that there's something missing, especially in certain scenarios, just let the play out. There's likely something that you are not seeing that that is allowing them to either call foul on this play or not call foul on this play, or a violation or anything for that matter. So just keep that in mind as you go through and you officiate these plays. Our next topic that we're going to talk about is loose ball fouls, and especially recently we're seeing a lot of coaches go through, we're calling these fouls, and coaches are saying it's a loose ball. That's they're just going for the ball, and that's great and all, but the fact of the matter is that when it comes down to it, players cannot hinder other players' progress to go after and get the basketball. So, you can see my bullet points on there, but just because the ball is loose does not mean that a player cannot foul. If they say that it's a loose ball, you say every rebounding foul is a loose ball, and yet, we're calling fouls there. Player, you'll also hear a coach say, it's a loose ball, they can't foul there. And I can say, okay, well, next time someone punches them in the face, I'm going to say it's a loose ball, and that's going to be your rebuttal. These are silly arguments that some of these coaches get when it comes to loose ball fouls. So just stick to the basics. Players cannot dive on players, shove players out of the way, take opponents' legs out. That's just facts. You can't do that. It stems from the legal guarding position rule. You're not going to find somewhere in the rule book that says players can't specifically do these things. But the fact of the matter is that they can't. That is hindering players' progress. That is creating significant advantages from illegal contact. It's not legal. So we need to get these plays right, and we'll take a look at some. Don't get that confused with players jockeying for position. When they jockey for position and they aren't creating significant advantages to one another, that's where we can pass on them. But we're talking about obvious fouls in which we need to get so that we can avoid injury. That's the biggest thing with these plays is avoiding injury and getting these foul calls so that they don't happen again. So let's revisit this play. We talked about it with coming in and helping. In this situation, we see that the ball is loose, and we have a player from white coming in and is going to try and get the basketball. And we see 32 red come out and basically take their legs out. That is an example of a loose ball foul and one that we want called. We see here that he comes rolling in, and even though he doesn't mean to, he rolls out and takes out his legs. And hinders him from being able to get that ball. And that is an example of how we would want to come in and get a loose ball foul. Again, white has that ball until red just comes rolling in and he essentially takes it away from him. That is a foul. So we want to come in and we want to make sure that we get plays like these because they are fouls. They create significant advantages. And basically, if we don't call this, strips of possession away from white for basically taking out, their legs. So let's take a look at this play. This is an example of where players are sort of jockeying for position, and this is where we don't need a foul. Players are go to the floor going to get the basketball, but neither one shoves each other out of the way. They don't dive onto each other. They don't take out each other's legs. They just get kind of lost and trying to get the basketball, diving on the floor. These are good hustle plays. These are examples of loose ball plays in which we want to let play out because there's no significant advantage gained by either player, either team, by how these players go after the basketball. This is another example of a good play on here. We see that the players kind of go after the ball, and we do see that, white 11 sort of, appears to shove blue 10, but they aren't, that's where we can kind of argue for incidental contact in this case. These are, again, two players going after the ball, and white 11 really doesn't shove them out of the way trying to get the ball. Blue 10 just kind of goes in there trying to get the ball and kind of bounces off of white 11 as they're trying to get the ball. This is a good example of, again, players jockeying for position, no significant advantage gained, and we can let this type of play on. Here's another play where we see two players kind of going at it, and the ball is all over the place, and then as the player's going for the ball, we see blue kind of come in here and trip up the white player's legs, and thus leading to him going on the floor and then a significant advantage being created. This is a situation where, again, we want to have a foul here. Everything is good until the blue player goes through and sticks their leg out and essentially trips white 4 going after the basketball. So this is a situation where we want to come in and we want to have a foul here because of the nature of that. Again, this is a legal contact. There's no legal guarding position or anything established here. He comes in and he comes and trips white 4. This is a foul that we want to get. So here's an example of a play in which there's kind of a loose ball, and we have a player going on top of another. This is also a loose ball foul. Players cannot come on top of each other and create advantages by diving onto players. This is in the nature of safety, and we want to come in and get these fouls, which is what the officials come in and get here. So moving away from loose ball stuff, we're just going to take a look at two other clips here to kind of round out this training tape. This first one is a reminder of the 4 spots. Remember that the ball in the front court goes to one of the 4 spots whenever there is a stoppage of play. This is not similar to the college rule. So in the college rule, timeouts and stuff like that end up not going to one of the 4 spots. So in this exact case, we see that the ball, there's a timeout granted to black, and then black goes, puts the ball back into play, and it is not given at one of the 4 spots. This is a situation where we need to put the ball at one of the 4 spots. If there's a timeout granted in the corner, and we don't go to one of the 4 spots there, that's a significant disadvantage that we are putting to the team who called the timeout. That is the rule that we have, and we need to follow it. It doesn't matter what our personal judgments are or what the college rules are. When we're reffing high school games, it needs to go to one of the 4 spots in a high school game. This last play kind of goes back to trusting the system, but it's just a yikes kind of play in general where we have players, it's a backcourt violation type of deal, and we have a timeout granted to a coach. So there's a lot to talk about. talking about backcourt status in general, we see that the ball's thrown up to a player. He's in the front court. He touches the ball while the ball's in the front court, and then the ball goes into the backcourt, and he kind of like dives onto the ball while the ball's in the backcourt, while his knee is on the line and kind of like in the backcourt. I mean, just a yikes play that I'm glad I'm not involved in. And the officials trying to handle this the best they can. As it relates to these types of situations, talking about the backcourt violation potential in itself, unless you have definite knowledge for sure that a player has front court status and touches the ball in the backcourt, you can play on in these types of situations. In this case, you could argue for a backcourt violation because what Black 4 does is, they're in the front court and the ball goes rolling to the backcourt, and while their knees are in the front court, he touches the ball that's in the backcourt. So you could definitely argue for a backcourt violation in this situation. It's very, very difficult to come in and get these plays right. One thing I want to talk about is the timeout granted. As a player, as an official, you need to make sure that the player has definite possession when the timeout is granted. In this case, I feel it is very hard to argue that when this coach calls timeout, there is possession and there is the ability for a timeout to be granted. Leave this to the trail or the center. If you're the lead here, you let this play on. You don't have definite knowledge for sure of if that ball is secured or not. Don't come in and grant the timeout. That is just a situation where we just want to play on. Let the trail or the center own this. Personally, I believe the center has a great look at this. Now, the coach coming in and calling a timeout to the lead isn't necessarily the best thing that helps us. But as the lead, you just got to shake your head and be disciplined. And again, not coming in and overstepping here, because this is a situation where when this timeout is granted, nobody has possession of the ball. Now, as a crew, you can come together and you could change this and say inadvertent whistle. That is okay to do. And in this case, we can come together as a crew and we can change it. Just a slight topic, we talk about the 4 spots. If you come and say inadvertent whistle, and we see the arrow is pointing towards white in this case. What happens here is, since you have an inadvertent whistle, since you are saying that this is not a backcourt violation, you're basically saying that this ball is being legally touched in the front court. So therefore, this ball, it's in the backcourt. You're saying that it's legally touched. It's just a kind of a mess of a play, and I know I'm kind of mixing my words here, but basically because of where the ball was when you granted the timeout, you would go to one of the 4 spots, since we see that the possession arrow is pointing towards white, and you're saying that this is legal, that this entire play was legal, and that there's no violation here. So kind of a mess of a play. Again, I'm certainly glad that I was not involved in this play, because I know that I would certainly struggle in the moment in these situations. I think most officials would, but that's why it's important to be mentally prepared for situations like this. Trust each other as a crew. Come together and talk about these types of plays when you have them, and do your best to adjudicate them the best we can, because these are really tough to get right. If you can get these plays right on the first try, I certainly applaud you. That's why I'm showing you this play now, so if you see a similar play, you can think back about these and hopefully get them right in your games. Okay, that will do it for training tape number 3. If you would like to become a member of the WOAA, you are certainly welcome to. You just have to be a member of one of the 4 associations that are listed here on the screen. You can kind of see, where your area is where you should join. If you are from kind of, not one of these areas, join the WROA, because it is completely virtual. That's in the bottom left there, and those are your contacts if you would like to join the WOAA. We have coach accounts as well. If you're interested in that, reach out to me and I can get you set up with that. Good luck in all of your games for the rest of January, and we'll see you again in February for the last training tape of the 23-24 school year.